Well, I think when you ask a 13-year-old boy that question, it's hard for them to put it in perspective and to know, looking back in 10 years, what he may appreciate about it versus right now. I think certainly my son, who's in grade 10 now and has the maturity to look back, he can appreciate the opportunities that he was given at that school to do public speaking and be in the play and be on every sports team. Like he said, all of those things helped build his confidence so much for high school.
Jessica Buckley and her family were moving back to Canada with 2 young boys in tow. They needed to find a school that would help their boys catch up and help the family manage the transition. They found Aurora Preparatory Academy, and in APA, they found all they needed and more. Aurora Preparatory Academy, located north of Toronto, serves kids from kindergarten through to grade 8. Jessica and her boys just said goodbye in a socially distanced graduation ceremony. Now, looking back, Jessica shared with me why she's grateful for having found APA's close-knit community and a school that managed to serve the needs of her boys at every step of the way. How many kids have you had go through Aurora Prep?
2. I have 2 sons, and they both graduated from Aurora Prep.
And one of them graduated just recently, is that right?
That's right. That's right. One finished grade 8 this past June, and it was a very interesting year to have a graduate and during COVID, and the school was very innovative and wanted to have a way to mark the experience and mark the moment for the kids. So they worked with the next door neighbors at the school, and we were able to do a drive-in style graduation, which was absolutely fantastic. Of course, the weather cooperated, but it was a really nice way to finish off our time at APA.
What was the dominant feeling for you and your kids, your family, with this parting farewell to APA?
A gratitude, I have to say. Every day when I dropped my kids off at Aurora Prep over the last, I guess it's been 7 years that I've been dropping the kids off every morning, there wasn't a day that I didn't drive away and feel gratitude for the school. It's the minute the kids walked in there, I knew that they were safe and cared for and being educated by people that truly cared about them as an individual. And I never drove away worrying. And that feeling carried on, and I felt that at graduation 110%, to the point where it was emotional speaking to the 2 principals at the graduation, just to be able to express my gratitude to them.
If that's the parting moment, how many years previously did that first moment take place? What was your introduction to APA?
It was an interesting time for us when we arrived at the school. We had immigrated back from the United States in the middle of the school year, and our kids started school there in January, which is always a little different when for kids to sort of make the transition into a new class in the middle of the school year, and you don't know how things are going to go. We moved back quickly and found ourselves we were staying in a residence inn at the time and waiting for our home to be ready. And there was a lot of transition in our family at the time. I have to say, walking into that school for the first time, and by the end of the first day, my kids saying how happy they felt, how welcome they were made to feel, and how by the end of the first week they felt a part of the community. It was huge for us at that time.
How long ago was that?
7 years, 7.5 years now.
So your son who just graduated grade 8, we're talking about grade 1 at the time.
Yeah, yes. My youngest was in grade 1 and my eldest was in grade 3 at the time.
The story you tell about that big moment of transition and starting off at APA, that does so much for kids, having that upheaval and having all that change and transition. And I'm wondering, what were the feelings you were picking up from your kids at the time?
I think something the school's always been so great at is making everyone feel as though they're valued as an individual. And it's the little things. It's the fact that every teacher will get to know the kids' names in every class, not just in their own classes. The other children get to know the other kids in the other grades. There's just a real sense of community. And I think when someone calls you by your first name, it's the most recognizable word in the world to you, and it really hits you. And that school does that extremely well for kids that are new and throughout their whole career there. So I think it makes them feel a part of it right away. And because the classes are smaller, which is one of the benefits of going to a small school like that, they get the individual attention from the teachers that they need, and they start to feel success, I think, early on.
How did APA first appear on your radar?
Well, we had lived in the area when the kids were first born, and I had heard of the school. I hadn't really thought much of it, to be honest. My kids were toddlers, and you're thinking of other things at that time. But then when we lived in the US for 5 years and we were returning to the area, we had a few friends whose kids had attended and spoken very highly of the school. So we toured the school and just felt like it would be a great fit for our kids. And knowing that we were returning in the middle of the year and that there would be transition. And also the class size was a big factor for us. And again, the recommendations that we had received. I also have a friend who is a principal at a school in York Region, and she highly recommended the school to me. So coming from someone in education, that recommendation held a lot of weight too.
What kind of decision-making process was it? Did you have a big list of schools to check, a big list of things you were looking for, or was it, or did it happen differently with recommendations and instincts and circumstance?
I think that there was a lot of circumstance. I think that, to be honest, we hadn't necessarily considered private education for our kids in the elementary years. I had always hoped that they would be able to maybe attend a private school for high school, but we hadn't planned on it for the elementary years. And when we were in the US, we had a great experience at the elementary schools. But when we moved back, one of my sons really needed the smaller class size, and that was becoming evident. So that was a big deciding factor of why we decided to look at that school. And then once we looked at it and found all of the other attributes, it was an easy decision.
You mentioned the small class sizes. I wonder if you could help us drill down into more detail there. Thinking about who your kids were as students at the time, what needs were you trying to meet?
Certainly, the needs were, making sure kids stayed on task and focused and got the individual help that they needed when they would get stuck or have trouble getting work started. As an example, with the smaller class size, the teacher is really always there to help kids through those times of struggle because they're able to. And there's lots of wonderful teachers that are teaching really big classes, but you just don't have the time to get around to every student. So I think that was really important. And I think in a small class, there's so much more opportunity for each child to share their voice, speak up, participate in different things. And it's a huge confidence booster. And I think that was the biggest thing that, I saw a change in my kids was their level of confidence in school.
Can you tell me more about that? Tell me about the changes you saw in those first few months.
Yeah, so I'm speaking of my older son now. I would say that, he had the most wonderful teacher for grade 3 and grade 4, 2 years in a row, because it was a split class at the time. And he built a relationship with that teacher and also had the benefit of having her for 2 years in a row, which ended up being a great thing because they hit the ground running in September. And I certainly saw his confidence just soar in his reading, his writing, math, and not just the academics. They're for a small elementary school, they have so much going on as far as the athletic program, which both my kids love sports and learned a lot of athletic. They were able to participate in a lot of different athletics at this small school that maybe they wouldn't have at a larger school because, quite frankly, they needed them for every team because there weren't too many kids that to choose from. So they had the ability to get on the team and improve. Whereas at some schools, you just may not even have a chance to get on the team necessarily. So fantastic athletic director, who's also a vice principal, cannot state enough amazing things about that man. He was just such a leader and a mentor to both of my boys. And then on the extracurricular side at the school, they have a program where there's an after-school club every day, and it's optional. My kids begged to stay for after-school clubs because they have so many fun clubs that they could participate in. So they did that. And the other thing that they do that's so unique is one of the principals, who's super talented, she's also a playwright. And she writes a play every year that the entire school participates in, where she writes a speaking part for every single child in the school. And it's hysterical. It's completely written for the parents. All the jokes are for the parents in the audience and the grandparents, and it's all sort of pop culture and music and so much fun. And so that's a big part of the school as well. So, there's the academic side, which is partly why you're there, and then all the other extracurriculars that really are little things that help the kids get confidence and get experience speaking in front of others and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and all of those good things that help them grow.
I have to ask more about this play. A speaking part for every kid, jokes that are made to have the parents in stitches. There's a lot going on there in terms of the relationship with student and teacher and parents. Tell me more about the culture and the community around this.
Oh, listen, I can't tell you. We get the DVD of the play every year, and it is the most treasured time of the year when the play comes around, which is in May. This year it was canceled due to COVID, and I have to say, knowing it was our last year at APA, I was maybe more upset about missing the play than anything. My older son, Thomas, was set to play Johnny Fever from WKRP in Cincinnati this year, so that was kind of a drag that he didn't get to. But it's very unique in that the principal knows the children so well that she can cast the kids for each of these parts and write a speaking line for each of them that she knows that they would be able to deliver. And then, of course, they have all the preparation, and a lot of time and effort go into the production, which teaches kids a whole other set of skills too, to know that when they're watching a live performance, these things don't just drop out of the sky. It really teaches them the effort that goes in to create something like that.
In education, we try to be more and more mindful about how the student is not just a student, but there's a student and a person, and both of them are learning and growing. Can you tell me about the approach at APA and how that supports the growth of that person?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, again, I've said this, but there is a real effort by the staff to see the children for who they are and really celebrate their unique qualities, which only instills confidence in each of these kids. And the community piece is huge at APA too. And, you can say, oh, we're all friends and we all join together and are kind to each other, but there it's actually true. It's true. The children are, of course, there's schoolyard things that happen, but I have to say it's very minor. And there's a real sense of community amongst the children, and that's just because of the way the leadership is at the school, and they handle things extremely well, in my experience.
What would you say are the values at play at APA?
Certainly community, both, the school community coming together to value each other, and also just the community at large. They do a lot of charitable work as well in the community and giving back. And they also push on the academic side, again, to each child's ability, and making sure that they're doing their best work and that they're being challenged. And there's always a variation of skills and abilities in every class. And I think the teachers there really do try, again, with a smaller class size, they can play to the levels that the kids are at. So I think that's a quality as well. And I think having fun and hilarious, and one of the principals has an extremely good sense of humor. Well, they both have great sense of humor, because the one that's the playwright is hysterical, and then the other one, really makes it a fun environment for the kids all the time.
I'm thinking of your son who just graduated. We've talked about what you really appreciate about APA. What's something that he might appreciate and miss about APA that's different from what you appreciate?
Well, I think when you ask a 13-year-old boy that question, it's hard for them to put it in perspective and to know, looking back in 10 years, what he may appreciate about it versus right now. I think certainly my son, who's in grade 10 now and has the maturity to look back, he can appreciate the opportunities that he was given at that school to, do public speaking and be in the play and be on every sports team. Like he said, all of those things helped build his confidence so much for high school. And my younger son at this point would probably answer that he enjoyed his friends at the school, but all of the things I just mentioned, he's equally enjoyed as much as my older son, and gotten a lot out of each of those extracurricular activities too.
I'd love to hear more about the extracurriculars. Maybe we should start with the sports. What sports did your boys play?
Well, the good news is that pretty much every sport that was available, they participated in. So in the fall, they would start off with volleyball, and then basketball into the winter. They had a ball hockey team, a golf team, a baseball team, a soccer team, dodgeball, and I don't know if I've missed anything, but another unique thing about the school, and I loved this because when we were in the US, there was very little recess, if you can believe it. One recess every day at our school in the States. And in the winter, they would do indoor recess 50 to 60% of the time, which was so challenging. So this school, of course, follows the Canadian standards. So they're outside 3 times a day, which is great. But also every Friday in the winters, they go skating for an hour next door. So they all learn to ice skate. And they do that for probably 8 to 10 weeks. And then they also have a swimming term as well. So every Friday they go and they have swimming lessons that are built right into the school curriculum. So up until the age of 12, they have swimming lessons once a week. So that's another unique component to the school that is just part of what they offer.
I'm curious about the facilities and also just the physical space. Could you paint a picture for me of the school, for when you walk into it, and what are we seeing? What are we experiencing?
Yeah, well, that would be the area that would not strike you as, wow, this is an amazing school. It is built inside a former industrial warehouse. Looks like nothing from the outside. They've sassed it up a little on the front entrance and with some new signage and tried to make it look inviting, but there's only so much you can do with a warehouse style building. However, once you get past the front door, all of that goes away. So the curb appeal is not high, but once you walk through those doors, it's the, you know, the warmth and the community and the classroom set up, and everything's on a small scale because it's a smaller school, but they have all the facilities that you would need and want.
Any facilities in particular that have been important to your kids?
Well, certainly the gym, and they have a really nice outdoor space as well. So the back, I guess they call it the break field, and they also back onto the Aurora Arboretum, which is a massive park with trails and a baseball diamond and a soccer field and other facilities that are attached to the back of their break field. So they have sort of an extended outdoor space that they can use as well.
I'm wondering if there's anything you've seen the school work to improve over the years your family's been there.
Certainly, they've always been really good at family communication, and they've worked to get more kids. So when we first started at the school, there was a change in ownership of the school, and the founder was retiring, and the current leadership team, the principals and vice principal, they took over the school themselves. And this was a massive time of transition for them, and it was a big risk that the three of them decided to take over the school on their own from the founder, and enrollment was quite low at that time. So they had to rebuild, or they weren't going to survive. And so they did that, and now the numbers have returned back to, you know, where they were many years ago when the founder was sort of at the peak of number of students. So they've really rebuilt that with word of mouth and their reputation, and so I'm very happy for them.
Do you have a sense of what they prioritized to make that rebuild a success?
I think they just really continued to do what they do best, which is educate kids and make everybody feel welcome. And I think word of mouth is the best form of advertising when it comes to families wanting to take their kids somewhere where they know they're going to excel. So I think they just focused on what they did best, to be honest. I don't know that there's another way to say it.
You know, at this point, Jessica, I want to give you the steering wheel. You know, I've asked you some questions, but what's the most important things to you on your radar?
Well, I mean, I'm so grateful that my kids have finished grade 8, both of them. It's a milestone in any family because, you know, the years from K to 8 are so formative and they're so important. And, you know, it sets you up for success in high school. And I will always be grateful to Aurora Prep for that. And it's individuals that, you know, I'm thinking of when I say that, and it's the collective as well. It's all the staff together and just their attitude about wanting each child to be successful and instilling in them the feeling that they have when they are successful, so that they want to repeat that throughout their lives. So it's really that solid foundation that I will always be so grateful for.
Do you often find yourself in a position where other parents are asking you about APA?
Yes, I do. We have some younger families in our neighborhood who are curious about the school, and I certainly am asked about it from time to time and encourage them to go check it out for themselves, because they do shadow days for kids that can attend the school and spend a day there to see what they think. And you know, I think that that's the best way to know if it's a fit for your child, is just to have them spend a day, because they'll, either immediately sense everything that I've spoken about today, which is usually the case with the kids that I hear of that do the shadow day. But I think that's the best way for kids to learn, or parents to make the decision.
Do you find that when parents are asking you about APA, that there's maybe a common thread in what they're asking about, or a burning question that's most likely to be on their minds?
I think families are just curious to know what else is out there as an option. We're lucky in Canada. There's so many good schools. And some people are interested in a private education. And I think if you are, and there are benefits, things that would benefit their children, most definitely they should be looking at Aurora Prep.
What would you say is something that sets Aurora Prep apart from the other schools, these imaginary parents of ours might be looking at?
Well, it's interesting. I always have felt that Aurora Prep, it's not one of the fancy private schools, and it's not fancy. As I said, the building is unattractive from the front, and once you get inside, it's a different story. But it's all of the things that matter in a private education without all the fancy buildings, shall we say. And so in my view, I always felt like it was a gem, and a little bit of a best kept secret, although today their enrollment is very strong. So I think that as far as the value goes for private education, it's amazing.
If you'll indulge me here, I want to do a little thought experiment and wave my magic wand and make you head of school. And as head of school, I want you to plan for the decade ahead for APA. And so with that in mind, thinking about this vision for the future of APA, what is a strength that you would double down on and something you would work to improve?
Okay. Well, you can't think 10 years ahead without planning in the pandemic right now. So I think that a strength that's so important in the world we're in right now is just connection and community. So knowing that kids may be attending school full-time, part-time, online, who knows? I think that the school continuing to develop the one-on-one relationships that they're so good at doing, and making every child feel valued. And I would continue that. And of course, that comes from the people and the leaders that are there. Something to improve upon, I think that really over time, as the school becomes more successful, they'll just be able to add to their facilities. And certainly what's there today is adequate, but as the school grows, then hopefully they would be able to add additional facilities as well. Oh, and a team bus would be very nice to get to all of the activities that are required. And playing sports against other schools, we always relied on the parents to drive the kids to these activities. So a school bus would be wonderful.
Cool. All right. Well, look, what I'd like to ask you about next is about the future. Your one son's graduated grade 8. You have a son in grade 10. And I'm curious, how has their experiences at Aurora Prep changed what yourself and themselves would look for the next school and the next school and beyond that in life?
Yeah, so I think that I would come back to the foundation of enjoying the atmosphere at APA, making connections with their teachers on a very personal level, where they know the teacher well and the teacher knows them well. It's great to go into high school with having had that experience, because you will seek that out again. And when you seek out to develop a relationship with your teacher in high school, and even in university or college or wherever they may go next, it always pays off. always pays off to build a relationship with your teacher and enhances your learning and everything else. So I'm hoping that they carry that with them. My older son has through high school so far, and I'm hoping my younger son will too. And I think the public speaking and presentation skills that they always focus on at APA2 is something that will carry with them through life. And everyone needs that, whether it's in your job or, you know, speaking at your best friend's wedding or whatever it is. You always need to be able to express yourself in front of a crowd, and when that starts at a young age, I think that skill needs to be it's a learned skill.
Any final words of wisdom for that parent making that big decision for their family?
Uh, Maybe I'll make one last comment. So I think that when I speak about the APA community, our experience over the last 7 years was that it was a group of hardworking families that prioritized education for their kids. And again, it was a school that didn't have all the bells and whistles of some of the larger private schools, but the quality of the experience for the kids was everything that matters there. And I think that really does set the school apart. And I would just finish by saying that.